Alien Queen inspected me once and decided, yes, this human will marry my daughter. Ethan never expected the message that arrived one quiet morning. The holographic screen blinked in the corner of his small outpost, displaying a seal he had only seen once in history books, the mark of the Xylarian Queen. His heart raced as he tapped the device, and a calm, commanding voice filled the room. "Ethan Carter, you are requested at the palace of Queen Xylara. Arrival is expected within 24 standard hours." Ethan blinked. He was just a surveyor, sent to chart mineral resources on a neutral planet at the edge of human space. He had never met an alien in person, let alone the ruler of a civilization that spanned hundreds of star systems. Yet now here he was, told to appear before the most powerful alien in known space. He packed quickly, leaving his small cabin and heading toward the shuttle port. The landscape of the neutral planet stretched before him, rocky plains under a pale green sky dotted with crystals that shimmered faintly in the sunlight. It was beautiful, almost peaceful, yet Ethan could feel the tension in his chest. Every story he had ever heard about the Xylarian court suggested that few humans left alive or unchanged. The shuttle ride was long, and Ethan watched as the planet grew smaller behind him. The palace came into view, a structure unlike anything he had imagined. It hovered slightly above the ground, supported by what seemed like glowing energy fields, and its surfaces reflected light in 1,000 subtle colors. Bridges connected floating platforms, and he could see dozens of beings moving with elegance and precision. As the shuttle docked, a guard approached. Ethan noted the subtle differences immediately. The guard's skin shimmered faintly, like liquid metal in motion, and his eyes had a depth that seemed almost infinite. He bowed, speaking in a language Ethan could barely comprehend, but somehow the shuttle's translator converted it into clear English. "Welcome to the palace of Queen Xylara. Follow me." The corridors of the palace were unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. The walls were translucent, revealing floating gardens within, and streams of light flowed along pathways without a visible source. Strange devices hummed softly, hovering in midair, adjusting the environment automatically. Ethan felt a mix of awe and intimidation. Every step seemed to pull him deeper into a world he didn't belong to. Finally, he was brought to a large chamber where the air itself seemed to hum with power. At the center, sitting on an elevated platform, was Queen Xylara. She was taller than any human, with a presence that demanded attention. Her skin had a subtle glow, and her eyes, violet and intense, seemed to look through him rather than at him. She didn't rise, she didn't gesture, she simply observed. Ethan swallowed hard. He had faced storms, treacherous terrain, and countless dangerous creatures during his work as a surveyor, but this was something else entirely. The weight of her gaze was heavy, almost suffocating. "Ethan Carter," the Queen said finally, her voice calm but resonant, "you are far from your home world, yet you stand here. Tell me, why should you not be dismissed as insignificant?" Ethan blinked. He hadn't prepared for anything like this. But instinct, something deep inside him, took over. He spoke carefully, choosing words that came from his heart. "I may be small compared to your civilization, Your Majesty," he said, "but humans have something valuable. We adapt. We care for one another. We don't give up easily. That has helped us survive in places where logic alone wouldn't." The Queen's gaze seemed to sharpen, and for the first time Ethan felt a flicker of recognition, almost curiosity in her eyes. "Is that so?" she asked, leaning forward slightly. "Let us test your claim." Without warning, a small being rushed past him, tripping over the edge of the platform. Ethan reacted instantly, catching the little creature before it hit the ground. The being squeaked in surprise, its shimmering skin reflecting the light, and clung to him. Ethan held it gently, speaking softly to calm it. The Queen observed quietly, then spoke, her tone almost approving. "Empathy. Not all humans possess it, yet you demonstrated it without hesitation." Ethan's heart raced. He had passed a small test, but he knew this was only the beginning. Then, in a moment that made the air in the chamber seem to still, the Queen spoke words that would change his life forever. "Yes," she said, her voice echoing with authority, "this human will marry my daughter." Ethan froze. He looked at her, then at the beings around her. Surely he must have misunderstood. "Marry your daughter?" he asked, voice barely audible. "Correct," the Queen replied simply, her expression unreadable. "She requires a partner who embodies the qualities of her people and yours. You, human, possess what is needed." Ethan's mind raced. Marriage with an alien princess. He had never even been on a proper date. He didn't even know her yet. And yet the Queen's words left no room for argument. This was not a request, it was a decree. A door at the side of the chamber opened and a figure stepped in. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. She was unlike anything he had imagined. Lyra, the Queen's daughter, moved with grace that was almost hypnotic. Her skin had the same faint shimmer as the Queen, and her eyes held an intelligence and curiosity that made Ethan feel both exposed and welcome at the same time. She stopped a few feet away from him, tilting her head as if examining him closely. "You are the human?" she asked, her voice melodic but firm. Yes," Ethan stammered, unsure of what else to say. Lyra's expression softened slightly, though her gaze remained piercing. "I have been told much about humans. Most are simple, reactive, untested. You seem different." Ethan swallowed again. "I try to do what is right. I try to help where I can." Lyra stepped closer, studying him silently. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. It was a gesture of acknowledgement, not approval, yet it felt significant. The Queen rose from her platform. "You will remain here for observation. Learn our ways, understand our culture. Prove your worth not only to me but to Lyra. Only then will this union proceed fully." Ethan realized that his life had changed completely in a single day. He was far from home, in a palace full of beings more advanced than he could comprehend. He would need every ounce of courage, intelligence, and humanity he had to navigate what lay ahead. Over the next hours, he was shown to quarters that were luxurious beyond any human imagination, with walls that changed color according to mood and beds that adjusted perfectly to his body. But Ethan could not sleep. He kept thinking of Lyra, the Queen, and the vast court that watched his every move. By evening, he found himself wandering through the palace gardens, floating terraces filled with alien flora. The air smelled faintly of ozone and flowers he could not name. Small creatures flitted past, glowing softly in the dim light. He paused at the edge of a fountain, staring at the water that seemed to ripple with energy rather than mere reflection. "You are far from your home world," a voice said behind him. Ethan turned quickly. Lyra stood there watching him with a faint smile. "I guess I am," he said, unsure how to respond. "Yet you do not seem afraid," she observed. "Most humans would panic, most humans would hide." I don't know," Ethan admitted. "I guess I just try to face things as they come." Lyra nodded, stepping closer. "Perhaps that is why your mother's queen finds you interesting. You have courage, but courage alone is not enough. You must understand us. You must see the world as we see it, yet remain true to yourself." Ethan looked at her, realizing that she was not trying to intimidate him but to challenge him, and in that moment he felt a spark of determination. "I will do my best," he said simply. Lyra's smile widened slightly, though her eyes remained serious. "Good. We will see if your humanity is as strong as your courage. The days ahead will test you, Ethan Carter, and I will be watching." As he watched her walk away, Ethan realized that this was only the beginning. He had survived storms, wild creatures, and treacherous terrain, but this was a different kind of challenge. A challenge not of strength, but of character, intelligence, and heart. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the palace, the eyes of the court, and the strange, impossible future that awaited him. He was a human among gods and rulers, small but unyielding. And if there was one thing he knew about humans, it was this: they never gave up, no matter how impossible the odds. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt truly alive. Ethan woke to the soft glow of the palace light, which adjusted gradually to the rising sun above the alien horizon. The chamber walls shimmered, displaying moving patterns of floating galaxies and rivers of color that seemed alive. He rubbed his eyes, still struggling to comprehend the life he had been thrown into. Yesterday, he had been a human surveyor on a quiet planet. Today, he was in the palace of the Zalarian queen, ordered to marry her daughter. He dressed slowly, careful not to make mistakes with the alien garments provided. The clothing was light but elegant, designed to float slightly above the body, and it moved as if responding to his thoughts. Ethan marveled at it. Every detail in this palace seemed designed to challenge humans' understanding of physics and perception. A soft chime signaled the arrival of his guide. The guard who had first met him yesterday bowed slightly. "You are to meet Princess Lyra for the day. She will instruct you in the ways of our people." Ethan nodded. He felt both nervous and curious. Yesterday had been a whirlwind of observation and testing, but he knew today would be about learning, understanding, and, perhaps, earning trust. He followed the guard down long corridors, passing rooms that seemed to float above empty space. Gardens hovered in midair, connected by bridges of light. Beings of all shapes and sizes moved gracefully, speaking in languages Ethan did not recognize. Yet, despite the strangeness, he felt a growing sense of wonder rather than fear. Humans had always adapted, and he reminded himself he could do it here too. Finally, they arrived at a large terrace overlooking the palace gardens. Lyra was waiting, standing at the edge where light and shadow met in a delicate balance. She turned as he approached, her expression unreadable but her eyes curious. "You are ready?" she asked. "I think so," Ethan replied cautiously. Lyra smiled faintly. "Good, then let us begin." The first lesson was simple but bewildering: etiquette. Lyra demonstrated the subtle gestures and expressions the Zalarians used to convey respect, honor, and humility. One small mistake could be insulting. One hesitation could signal weakness. Ethan struggled at first, stumbling over movements and postures, but he tried his best to mimic her precisely. "You are clumsy," she said lightly, "but you observe carefully. That is more important." Ethan chuckled nervously. "I'll take that as a compliment." "It is," Lyra replied, her eyes scanning him with interest. "Humans are often underestimated. They make mistakes, yes, but they learn quickly if they try." Ethan felt a small surge of pride. Perhaps this was his chance to prove what humans were capable of. After etiquette came language. The Zalarians spoke with musical tones and subtle inflections, each sound carrying meaning beyond simple words. Lyra had him repeat phrases, correct pitch, and learn gestures that accompanied speech. The lessons were exhausting, but Ethan felt satisfaction in small successes. He stumbled at times, but each correction helped him understand the depth and precision of alien communication. By midday, they moved to the gardens, where physical agility and perception were tested. The plants here were alive in ways Ethan had never imagined. Some responded to touch, others to thought or emotion. Lyra led him through exercises where he had to navigate a pathway of floating platforms, each shifting slightly with every step. Ethan hesitated at first, his legs trembling as the platforms moved. But he remembered his training as a surveyor. He had crossed unstable terrain and climbed cliffs that would terrify most people. Slowly, carefully, he adjusted his balance and timing. Each step became more confident. By the end, he was moving with a rhythm that even Lyra had to acknowledge with a subtle nod. "You are stronger than you appear," she said, her tone approving, "and more careful than most humans I have observed. That is impressive." Ethan smiled. "Thanks, I guess we survive by paying attention." "Indeed," Lyra replied, "observation and intuition are as important as strength." As the day continued, Ethan was introduced to the court. He observed advisors, scholars, and diplomats from across the galaxy. Each interaction was a test in disguise. He was asked questions about human culture, ethics, and decision-making. He answered honestly, even when he knew his perspective might be considered naive. One moment stood out. A group of Xylarians presented a moral puzzle, designed to see how he would react under pressure. A simulated scenario played out, showing two colonies in conflict. One choice could save many lives but harm a few. Another would preserve fairness but risk greater loss. Ethan thought carefully, weighing outcomes not with cold calculation but with empathy. He chose a solution that minimized harm while finding compromise, a choice that surprised the alien observers. Lyra's eyes met his across the chamber. "You see things differently than we expected," she said. "Your humanity is remarkable." Ethan felt a flush of pride. He had no intention of impressing anyone. He simply made the choice he believed right. Yet in doing so, he had proven the very qualities the Queen had seen in him yesterday. In the afternoon, they walked among the floating gardens again. Lyra pointed out plants that reacted to thought, discussing their uses in medicine, energy, and art. Ethan asked questions, showing curiosity and a willingness to learn. She was impressed by his adaptability. Unlike other humans she had heard of, Ethan didn't reject the alien way of life outright. He studied it, absorbed it, and even applied his own logic to understand it better. "You are unlike any human I have known," she said finally, stopping at a small grove of flowers that shimmered in violet light. "Most would panic, flee, or dismiss what they cannot comprehend. You engage." Ethan looked at her, unsure what to say. "I guess humans are curious by nature. We want to understand the world around us, even when it's strange or frightening." Lyra nodded, a thoughtful expression crossing her features. "Curiosity and courage, that combination is rare. It may be why your queen finds you suitable for her daughter." Ethan felt a mix of pride and anxiety. The idea of marrying Lyra still seemed impossible. Yet he realized that she was not just a prize or a task. She was a being with intelligence, judgment, and agency. And if he was to survive this challenge, he would need to earn her respect, not simply obey commands. By evening, the palace prepared for a small feast. Ethan had expected formalities and stiffness, but instead, he found the court relaxed, observing him quietly. Conversations were conducted in multiple languages, some translated instantly by devices Ethan carried. He noticed that the court was not merely testing him. They were watching how he reacted under scrutiny, how he treated others, and how he maintained composure in the face of the unknown. During the meal, a minor accident occurred. A servant tripped, spilling a small bowl of glowing liquid. Ethan instinctively reached out, catching it before it could fall and scorch the surface. The court murmured, impressed by his reflexes and concern. Lyra's eyes met his again, and she allowed herself a small smile. "You are beginning to understand," she said quietly, leaning close so only he could hear. "It is not enough to survive our tests. You must also see value in the little things, the lives around you." "That is the essence of trust." Ethan nodded. He had faced danger before, but he realized that survival here meant more than avoiding physical harm. It meant understanding, empathy, and awareness, qualities humans possessed naturally, even if aliens sometimes underestimated them. As the evening drew to a close, Lyra led him back to his quarters. The palace shimmered under a sky dotted with unfamiliar constellations. Ethan paused at the terrace, looking out over the gardens, the floating platforms, and the glowing city beyond. He felt small yet determined. "You have potential," Lyra said, her tone serious now. "But potential alone is not enough. You must continue to learn, continue to adapt, and continue to show the qualities that make humans surprising." Ethan took a deep breath. "I will, I promise." Lyra studied him for a moment longer, then turned and walked away, her figure blending with the light and shadow of the palace. Ethan realized that his journey had only just begun. He had survived the first tests of etiquette, language, and agility. He had impressed the court with his honesty, courage, and empathy. But the days ahead would challenge him further, and he knew that the Queen's daughter was watching closely. For the first time, Ethan felt a sense of purpose unlike anything he had known. He was no longer just a human on a survey mission. He was a representative of his species, a symbol of human resilience and ingenuity. The court may doubt him, and the palace may challenge him, but he had something the Xylarian queen recognized: humanity. And that, he realized, could be more powerful than any alien technology or wisdom. As he lay down to rest, Ethan looked out at the alien horizon one last time. Tomorrow would bring new lessons, new challenges, and perhaps new opportunities to prove that humans were more than primitive observers. They were capable, intelligent, and courageous. And if he could navigate the palace, win trust, and earn the respect of Lyra and her people, he might just survive and thrive in a world that was nothing like his own. And deep down, Ethan knew this. Being human was not a weakness here. It was his greatest strength. The morning light in the palace was cooler than usual, streaming through the translucent walls with a faint bluish hue. Ethan rose early, feeling a mixture of anticipation and unease. Today was not about lessons in etiquette or language. Today was about trials, tests designed by the Queen to measure his adaptability, courage, and wisdom. Lyra arrived at his quarters promptly. She was calm, composed, and seemed more serious than she had ever been. "Ethan," she said, "today you will face challenges that will test every part of you, mind, body, and heart. You must succeed not just for yourself, but to show the court and my mother that humans are capable allies." Ethan nodded, swallowing hard. He had been tested before, but he understood that these trials were far more significant. They were not simply exercises. They were the true measure of his worth in a society that had mastered survival on scales humans could scarcely imagine. They walked together to a large chamber that seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. Holographic projections of alien cities, landscapes, and natural phenomena floated in the air. Lyra motioned to a platform in the center. "The first trial is perception," she explained. "You must navigate a shifting environment and reach the center without touching the boundaries. The platforms change and the rules are not always clear. Trust your instincts, but do not act recklessly." Ethan stepped forward cautiously. The platforms beneath his feet moved slightly, sensing weight and adjusting in response. He took a deep breath and focused, recalling his experiences as a surveyor. He had crossed unstable terrain, navigated cliffs, and read subtle environmental cues for survival. Here he would need every ounce of observation and intuition. The platforms shifted faster as he moved. A sudden change caused him to stumble, but he adjusted quickly, finding a rhythm in the motion. Step by step, he advanced, relying on timing, balance, and human adaptability. Observers in the gallery above murmured in surprise. Most humans would have failed immediately. When he reached the center, Lyra nodded approvingly. "You move differently than we expected. Humans adapt in ways we cannot always anticipate. That is valuable." Ethan exhaled, feeling a spark of confidence. One trial completed, but he knew the day would only get harder. The second trial tested intellect. He was brought to a room filled with complex alien machinery and holographic data streams. A series of logical puzzles awaited him, each one designed to challenge reasoning beyond human norms. Lyra explained, "These puzzles are not merely about finding the right answer. They are about understanding patterns, predicting consequences, and applying creativity." Ethan studied the puzzles carefully. Many were unlike anything he had seen before: symbols that shifted meaning, sequences that evolved over time, and simulations that responded to decisions in unexpected ways. He paused, analyzing patterns and testing possibilities. At first, he failed several attempts, but each failure taught him something new. Slowly, he began to solve the puzzles, using both logic and intuition. He noticed that some patterns mirrored natural phenomena on Earth, weather systems, animal behaviors, and the flow of water. Applying these insights allowed him to find solutions that the observers had not anticipated. Lyra watched him silently, her expression thoughtful. "You are learning faster than we anticipated. Humans often rely too heavily on brute logic. Yet you combine it with observation and experience. That is rare." Before he could respond, a sudden alert sounded. The next trial was already starting, a test of ethics and judgment. Holographic scenarios displayed conflicts between alien colonies, each scenario designed to test his ability to balance compassion, strategy, and decision-making. One scenario showed two neighboring colonies on the brink of war. One solution could save thousands but sacrifice a few key individuals. Another solution preserved fairness but risked greater overall loss. Ethan paused, feeling the weight of responsibility. He remembered Lyra's words. Human empathy was powerful, but it must be paired with reason. After careful consideration, he chose a solution that minimized harm while creating a path for cooperation. The simulation adjusted in real time, revealing unforeseen consequences. Ethan observed calmly and adapted his approach, making adjustments that reflected both logic and compassion. The observers, Lyra included, remained silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice low but full of respect. "Your choices are human, yet wise. You see value in lives beyond numbers and calculations. That is why your queen finds you interesting." Ethan felt a sense of pride, tempered with the knowledge that he had not yet proven himself completely. The final trial remained, a test of courage and trust. He was led to a chamber where holographic walls created a deep canyon filled with floating debris and shifting energy fields. His task was to cross the chasm and retrieve a crystal at the far side without triggering traps or alarms. Ethan hesitated at the edge, the height dizzying and the gap seemingly endless. He looked to Lyra, who simply nodded, signaling that he must act. He reminded himself that humans were resourceful. He had survived extreme conditions, from storms to dangerous wildlife, relying on quick thinking and courage. Step by step, he moved across the floating platforms. Some shifted unexpectedly, others were illusions meant to trick him. He relied on observation, intuition, and careful judgment. At one point, a platform tilted sharply beneath him, and he barely caught himself, steadying his balance just in time. The observers gasped, but Ethan remained focused. Finally, he reached the crystal and retrieved it, carefully stepping back toward safety. Lyra's expression softened into genuine approval. "You have completed all trials," she said. "Few humans could have done what you just accomplished. You have courage, intelligence, adaptability, and empathy. You have proven that humans are more than we expected." Ethan exhaled, feeling relief and accomplishment. Yet as they returned to the gallery, Lyra's tone grew serious. "There are those in the court who do not wish for this union," she explained quietly. "They see humans as weak, unworthy, or unpredictable. Some will try to discredit you. Others may attempt subtler forms of sabotage. You must remain vigilant." Ethan felt a shiver. He had survived the trials, but he realized this challenge was only part of a larger test: survival in a complex political environment. His actions now could affect not just his own future, but the alliance between humans and Xylarians. That evening, they walked among the floating gardens again. Lyra pointed out plants that reacted to thought and emotion, explaining how each was cultivated for purpose: medicine, energy, art. She asked Ethan questions about Earth, humans, and his own experiences. Ethan answered honestly, showing both curiosity and humility. He admitted mistakes he had made on his missions, explained how humans adapted to extreme environments, and shared stories of courage and cooperation. Lyra listened intently, clearly impressed by the depth of his understanding and his willingness to engage fully with another culture. "You understand the value of learning," she said, "and you apply it. That is rare among humans and rare among us as well." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. He realized that Lyra's approval mattered, not just as a reflection of the Queen's decision, but as recognition from someone who could see him as more than an outsider. As night fell, the palace shimmered under a sky filled with unfamiliar constellations. Ethan stood on his terrace, reflecting on the day. He had faced trials of perception, intellect, ethics, and courage. He had demonstrated the strengths that made humans remarkable: adaptability, empathy, ingenuity, and perseverance. He thought of the court, the Queen, and Lyra. He realized that proving himself was not about showing dominance or superiority. It was about showing respect, understanding, and the ability to contribute meaningfully to a world unlike his own. Ethan also understood that the challenges ahead would grow even more difficult. There would be tests of loyalty, trust, and diplomacy. There would be those who sought to undermine him simply because he was human, but he felt ready. He had survived storms, wild landscapes, and impossible odds. Now, he would face the intricate challenges of alien politics with the same resolve. For the first time since stepping into the palace, Ethan felt a sense of belonging, not because he was accepted blindly, but because he had earned recognition through courage, wisdom, and humanity. And deep down, he knew this. Humans were often underestimated. Yet their true power lay not in technology, not in strength, but in their ability to learn, adapt, and act with heart. That power had brought him this far, and it would carry him further still. Ethan returned to his quarters that night, feeling exhausted but determined. The trials had been daunting, yet they revealed something essential. He was not just a human in an alien world. He was a human who could make a difference. And in this place, among beings who had mastered survival on scales humans rarely imagined, that made him extraordinary. He closed his eyes, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, tests that would go beyond skills and intellect, reaching into trust, loyalty, and courage. But Ethan felt ready. He was no longer merely a visitor in the Xylarian palace. He was a participant in a story larger than himself, a story in which humans could shine. And somewhere, deep in the palace gardens, Lyra watched, noting his determination, his careful choices, and his resilience. She understood now that the Queen's judgment was not mistaken. This human possessed qualities rare even among her own people. And that recognition, she realized, was only the beginning. The palace was quieter than usual that morning, yet the tension in the air was unmistakable. Ethan sensed it the moment he stepped onto the terrace. Today was the day of the grand ceremony, a formal recognition of his worthiness and the union with Lyra. But more importantly, it was also the day when opposition within the court might reveal itself. Lyra approached, her expression serious but calm. "Ethan," she said softly, "some among my people do not wish for this alliance. They may attempt interference, either subtle or overt. You must stay vigilant and trust your judgment as you have in the trials." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He had survived the Queen's trials, proven his intelligence, courage, and empathy. Now, the real challenge awaited: navigating the complexities of alien politics and safeguarding not only himself, but the fragile bond forming between humans and Xylarians. The grand hall shimmered under soft light that seemed to float freely, illuminating platforms that appeared to hover midair. Dignitaries from countless star systems had gathered, their appearances diverse and strange by human standards. Ethan felt a surge of nerves as he stepped forward, yet he reminded himself of all he had accomplished so far. Humans had faced impossible odds on many worlds. Adapting and thriving was in their nature. The ceremony began with formalities. The queen sat elevated above the court, her gaze sweeping over the assembly. Her voice resonated through the hall. Today, we recognize not only a union between Lyra and this human, Ethan Carter, but also a potential alliance between our peoples. It is a choice made not lightly, but with careful consideration of the qualities each brings to this galaxy. A ripple of murmurs ran through the assembly. Some eyes glimmered with curiosity, others with disapproval. Ethan felt a moment of unease but quickly focused. This was no longer about impressing Lyra alone. It was about demonstrating humanity's value on a cosmic stage. As the ceremony progressed, Ethan sensed subtle movements, signals from those who opposed him. Objects shifted slightly in the floating chambers. Minor energy fluctuations hinted at a test not sanctioned by the queen. Lyra's sharp eyes caught them as well. "Stay calm," she whispered. "Observe, respond, but do not panic." A sudden alarm echoed through the hall. A holographic display flared, revealing a minor sabotage attempt. A small energy conduit aimed to disrupt the ceremony and create chaos. Panic spread among some of the dignitaries. Ethan felt the instinctive tension of a battlefield, but he remembered his past experiences. Humans had survived storms, collapsing terrain, and hostile creatures with calm focus and quick thinking. He analyzed the situation swiftly. Using his understanding of the palace's technology, what he had observed in lessons and during trials, he identified the source of the interference. Carefully, he recalibrated the conduit, redirecting the energy harmlessly into the palace systems. The lights stabilized, the hum returned to its normal rhythm, and the court regained composure. A few of the dissenters shot glances his way, clearly surprised. Ethan had neutralized the threat not with force, but with intelligence and calm action. Lyra's eyes reflected both relief and admiration. "You acted well," she said quietly as they took their positions for the ceremony. "Not just with courage, but with thought and care. That is why your people are valuable." Ethan nodded. He knew that this moment was more than personal. It symbolized a bridge between worlds, showing that humans could act decisively, wisely, and compassionately even in circumstances entirely alien to them. The final part of the ceremony required Ethan to demonstrate understanding of Xylarians' values, loyalty, empathy, and vision. He approached the ceremonial altar where a holographic projection of Lyra's life and the history of her people appeared. Each image and symbol represented a lesson, a value, or a responsibility he was expected to understand. Ethan focused. He traced the symbols, acknowledging their meaning silently. When a moment required him to make a symbolic choice, choosing paths representing courage, empathy, and wisdom, he selected them with intention. The court watched, impressed by his clarity and respect for the culture he was joining. Lyra joined him at the altar. She extended her hand, her gaze meeting his directly. "I see that you understand, Ethan, not just my people but the responsibility of this union." Ethan took her hand, feeling a mix of nerves and pride. "I will honor it," he said firmly. "Not because I have to, but because it is right." The queen stood and raised her voice, clear and commanding. "Then let it be known, Ethan Carter, human, has proven his worth. Lyra, daughter of the Xylarians, accepts him not as a subject but as a partner. This union symbolizes trust, cooperation, and the recognition of qualities that transcend species." The court erupted in applause, though a few murmurs of dissent remained. Ethan glanced at the dissenters, confident now. Their doubts could not diminish the recognition he had earned. Human courage, intelligence, empathy, and adaptability had carried him this far, and it would continue to serve as a bridge between worlds. After the formal declarations, the ceremony moved into a less structured celebration. Ethan walked among dignitaries, engaging with beings from many star systems. He answered questions about Earth and humans with honesty and respect, demonstrating the qualities that had impressed the Queen and Lyra. Lyra remained by his side, guiding him and introducing him to the leaders of her people. She asked questions of her own, testing his insight and ability to respond thoughtfully. Each interaction strengthened the impression that humans, often underestimated, could act with wisdom, courage, and diplomacy in ways even advanced species could respect. At one point, a young diplomat from a distant star system approached. "Your quick thinking just now saved this ceremony," the diplomat said, nodding respectfully. "Humans may be new to galactic politics, but your instincts, they are sharp." Ethan smiled. "Thank you. I've learned from my people and from what I've observed here. Sometimes the simplest approach, calm observation and careful action, is the most effective." Lyra squeezed his hand gently. "You continue to impress, not just with action but with thought. That is why this union is not only accepted, but celebrated." As the celebration continued, Ethan realized how far he had come. From a nervous surveyor unsure of his place in an alien palace, he had become someone who could act decisively, wisely, and with heart in a world that was completely unfamiliar. Humans had been underestimated, but he had shown that their qualities, adaptability, empathy, courage, and ingenuity, were strengths on a galactic scale. By nightfall, the festivities drew to a close. The Queen approached Ethan privately, her expression warm but serious. "You have exceeded expectations," she said. "Not only have you proven your worth to me and Lyra, but you have also shown the court that humans are capable of extraordinary things. Your actions today will be remembered across star systems." Ethan bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only tried to do what was right." "That is precisely why you succeeded," she replied. "Never underestimate the power of doing what is right. It is a lesson even the most advanced civilizations sometimes forget." Lyra joined them, her eyes shining with quiet pride. "Ethan, you have not only proven yourself, but you have earned my respect. I am glad my mother chose you." Ethan smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment he had never experienced. "And I am honored to be part of your world, and to build a bridge between our peoples." The Queen nodded approvingly. "Then let the union begin." Ethan and Lyra stood together at the edge of the ceremonial terrace, overlooking the palace gardens that floated beneath them. The stars of unfamiliar constellations glimmered overhead, casting a gentle light on the gathering below. Their hands clasped, their eyes met, and in that moment the distance between human and Zalarian melted. This was more than a marriage. It was a partnership, a recognition that humans could rise to challenges, understand, and contribute meaningfully to a galaxy far beyond their own world. The ceremony symbolized a new era, one where trust, courage, and empathy bridged differences of species, culture, and history. As the palace hummed with quiet celebration, Ethan realized something profound. Humans had always faced uncertainty, danger, and the unknown. Yet time and again, they had adapted, survived, and thrived. In this moment, he embodied that truth. Being human was not a weakness. It was a strength that could shine even among gods, rulers, and civilizations far older and more advanced than his own. Lyra squeezed his hand gently. "We will have much to learn from each other," she said, "but I am confident that together we can face anything." Ethan nodded. "And I am ready." The Queen stepped back, observing her daughter and the human she had chosen. "Then let the record show," she said, her voice carrying across the palace and beyond, "that the human has earned his place not through conquest or force, but through courage, wisdom, empathy, and the essence of what it means to be human. Let this day mark the beginning of a new chapter for humans, for Zalarians, and for the galaxy." As Ethan and Lyra stood side by side, the hall erupted in applause. This was no longer just a human in an alien world. This was a human who had proven that courage, empathy, and ingenuity could bridge any divide. And somewhere, high above in the palace gardens, The stars watched silently as two species began a partnership that would reshape the galaxy, one born from respect, trust, and the undeniable strength of humanity. Ethan knew this was only the beginning. Challenges would come, differences would arise, and trials would continue. But now he had proven one undeniable truth. Humans could rise to any occasion, adapt to any world, and leave a mark that even the oldest civilizations could not ignore. And as he looked at Lyra, smiling beside him, he realized that the journey had brought him not just to acceptance, but to friendship, respect, and the chance to shape the future. The human spirit had triumphed, quietly yet powerfully, and the galaxy had taken notice.